Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would someone move item 1.02?
Move it.
To approve?
Second.
Are there any additions or corrections to this agenda?
No, there are not.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
And abstentions. Thanks, Lynn. Hello. Lynn Lyons.
Hello.
Lynn Lyons is with us this evening, and Mr. Crandall is not able to attend tonight. And that passed 6-0. Our evacuation procedure. In the event of an emergency, I need to inform you that we have exits on either end of this room. Please go to either exit and out the door and move away from the building, and I would ask you to do that in an orderly fashion. Would you now join me in the pledge for flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. No one signed up for public forum this evening. We'll move on to item 1.06 to approve the meetings from the March 22nd meeting. Would someone move it?
Move it. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions?
Abstain.
Pass 501. Item 1.07 to approve the March 28th minutes.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Pass 501. Are there any questions regarding the President's report? And just to remind you, at your seat tonight is documentation regarding that city meeting for your reading pleasure. All right, if there's no questions with any of the items, and a reminder on the April 28th Art and Education sponsored event by the Oswego County School Boards Association. David, did you want to speak to that at all? Or?
Nothing additional, I don't think. I think Dennis done a good job by email.
Yeah. And so she just needs a response from everyone. And do you know the date that she needs a response by, David?
I don't know.
I don't either. All right, I'll try to check.
I can place that in the...
That would be good.
In the daily.
All right. All right, I'm turning this meeting over now to Superintendent Baldino.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a beautiful day outside. In the 60s, saw kids down on the fields and out around the schools and out and about today, so maybe a touch of spring has finally arrived. This evening we have two items. We're going to start off with the winter athletics with Mr. Ells along with Reagan LePage and Abigail Mayville going to be presenting. Mr. Ells and team.
Good evening. I always like to end each winter or each season, sports season, with just a recap of all of the highlights from our teams. We had a great winter season this year with some great highlights going on. This evening I brought two of our student athletes, senior athletes with us. They'd like to help me present, try to liven things up. They said I may be a little bit on the boring side. So they helped me with the slides and they've done a little skit here that we'll be able to present our sports recap. So without further ado, we have Abby Mayville and Reagan LePage.
Welcome.
Before we begin the presentation, I would like to just start off by saying that we had a total of 316 athletes among modified JV and varsity. We had a total of 142 varsity athletes. JV there was 56, and modified there was 118. So there was a lot of kids playing sports this winter season. So I just wanted to throw that out. And I'm going to give it to Abby.
We're going to start off with girls basketball. This season we had 10 varsity athletes, 13 JV, and 28 modified. They were a scholar athlete team. They were seeded third for the Section 3 tournament. They were third in the league. Our Natalie Frost was first team all-league and led our team in scoring. Carly Patterson was second on our team, or second team all league, and Claire Broderick and Kenzie Meyer, our two seniors, were honorable mentions this season.
For boys basketball, there's a participation number of 13 on varsity, 12 on JV, 15 on 9, and then 31 on modified. They were also a scholar athlete team, and they were second in the SCAC league. They were the only team in the SCAC Empire with 2 first-team all-league players. And they were seated second at the Section 3 tournament. And Gavin Doty was the lead player who led the team in scoring. And then Sam Cotton and Gavin Doty were first-team all-league.
Oh my goodness, boys and girls indoor track. We had 6 boys this season and 16 girls. Both teams were scholar athlete teams. We had Lydia Maravito placed first in leagues and class tournaments for shot put. She was first team all league. And Allison Standish was first team in the league. And then our boys' highest scorer, was Ryan Carroll. We also had a couple records broken this season. Allison Standish in shot put and weight throw. And our SMR relay with Mary Jarrett, Kaylee McCarthy, Maya Carroll, and myself.
Moving on to varsity boys hockey, we had a participation number of 22 on varsity. They qualified for the sectional tournament, and their high scorer was Freddie White, who is a 12th grader. And then their all-league players were Freddie White and Daniel Devendorf, who is a freshman.
Winter cheerleading, we had 16 participants on varsity and 9 on JV. They placed second in the league tournament this year. Third in sectionals, Cassie Hoffman and Elizabeth Christman were both Section 3 All-Stars.
Now for varsity wrestling, there's a participation number of 17 on varsity, 22 on JV, and 14 on modified. They won the Haynes tournament, won the SDAC league title, and placed second at the dual meet tournament for Section 3. Freddie Pagan won the Section 3 tournament and later went on to states. And their high scorers were Freddie Pagan, Logan Murphy, Dylan Waldron, Jonathan Closey, and Walter Copa.
Our boys and girls bowling team this year were both scholar athlete teams. The girls won the league championship this year and sectionals for Class B. They were first team all league players. So Alexis Ingersoll, Jaden Harrington, Miranda Laws, Addison Nichols, and Haley Payment were all first team all league players, which is a really big deal, by the way. And our top average scorers in the division were Alexis in first, Addison in second, Haley in third, Miranda in fourth, and Jaden in fifth. And our boys' highest scorers were Dalton Hines, Caleb Crandall, and Matthew Brown.
Next, we have swimming and diving, which is a co-ed team made up of 28 athletes. They were a scholar athlete team, and this team broke 9 records, which maybe I'm biased because I'm a swimmer, but that's awesome. That's like really awesome. So Bryce Rogers broke the 200 free record. Rosie Ledoux broke the 50 free and 100 back. Becca Stone broke the 100 fly. Courtney Pierce broke the 100 breaststroke and 200 IM. The 200 free relay for the boys was broken by TJ, Bryce, Tyler Ledoux, and Seth Godfrey. And the 200 free relay was broken by girls, Becca, Rosie, Courtney, and Claire Murray. And then for diving, Will Patterson demolished the record. We are now going to move on to athletes that competed at the New York State Championships.
First, we have Allison Standish, and she competed at shot put. Allison took second at our Class B championship meet, and she won section state qualifiers, which offered her the opportunity to move on to states in Staten Island this year. And she finished in 22nd place in the entire state, and it was, I believe it's her second or third year on varsity. So she killed it this year.
TJ Clayton met at the state qualifying time and earned a trip to the stadium meet at Ithaca on March 4th. Teddy finished the season with a 30th place finish at the state meet, and this is the second consecutive state meet that TJ has qualified for. He finished the season with another school record, making it the second record he has broken so far.
Bryce Rogers competed in the 100-meter butterfly race. Bryce was, first of all, he won sectionals, and he earned the trip to the state meet to Ithaca on March 4th. Bryce finished the season with a 24th place finish at the state meet, and he finished the year with 2 new school records.
For diving, Will Patterson earned enough points at the Section 3 state qualifier meet and earned a trip to the state meet in Ithaca on March 4th. Will finished the season with a 5th place finish at the sectional meet. And Will, he broke one record, but the reason he said he broke 2 was he at the sectional meet broke the record. We were like, Will, that's really, really good. And then he went to the state meet and broke it again. So he really outdid himself this season.
And we have Freddie Pagan. He competed for our wrestling team. He won the 102 weight class in the Section 3 championship, and he earned a spot to compete in states in Albany this year on February 25th and 26th. This was the second trip to states for him, and Freddie finished this year with a 28-4 record. And to finish off the night, we have Alexis Ingersoll. This was her 5th year of bowling, and it's her final season with us. She had the highest bowling average, which was a casual 217.5 in leagues, and both divisions, and became, this is so small, I'm so sorry guys. And she was an automatic qualifier for the composite team for Section 3. With Alexis, I'm sorry. Her performance at states and the Section 3 composite team, I can't read it again, I'm sorry.
Was made up of the 6 highest averages in the section, which won an overall state title. Alexis finished her high school career with 2 perfect games, qualified for 6 state tournaments, and will just keep competing for Division I next year at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. So Alexis is amazing at bowling, needless to say. Before I turn it over to Mr. Ells to talk about the leadership conference, I just want to conclude with 2 things. Number 1, our athletes did amazing this year. Every single athlete that competed just went above and beyond, especially those state ones. And I do want to thank you all on behalf of Abigail and myself for allowing us to speak tonight. So, Mr. Ells.
Thank you, ladies. That was a much better performance than I did. So, this is the last slide of the night, and I just wanted to let everybody know that New York State has started back up because of COVID reasons. These things were canceled in the past, but these are leadership conferences. Unfortunately, this year's was virtual, but we brought in 20 student athletes on Friday, and we went through 5 different workshops. Again, it was virtual, and our kids did a great job with it, even though they were sitting there. But if it was a live event, there would have been breakout sessions and more interactive. But our kids, took away a lot. As you can see, there was items in there about team building, nutrition, and then we ended the day with 5 student athletes from Syracuse University that put on their perspective of how to get into college, how to stay in college, and how to improve your grades in college. So they did an amazing job being able to speak to our student athletes. So like I said, we had 20 student athletes there. We were there for the entire day. That's just step 1. We do plan on bringing back the Captain's Club, where we meet on a monthly basis with our student athletes, our captains of our student athlete teams, and be able to build leadership skills to help lead our teams and make better decisions or better outcomes. This is the last slide I have, so does anybody have any questions for the 3 of us?
No, but thank you for a wonderful presentation, and thank you for bringing both Reagan and Abigail to us to share. Their excitement is it's nice. It's nice to feel that. So thank you. You did a great job, ladies. And you too, Mr. Elf.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to hear the performance of our students and the coaches and the teams throughout the course. And thank you to all the families. It's a privilege and the honor of working with the kids. So thank you. Next up is the budget update. I'm going to move to the front of the room. Got a microphone this time, huh? Imagine that. Okay, so good evening, everyone. Also this evening, Dr. Lisi's going to be assisting, as well as our treasurer, Paula Hayden, and Danielle DiBiase, who's in the back there. If you haven't met Danielle, she's there. There's Paula. They're here to answer any other questions. So really trying to change the way we kind of approach with a team effort here to pull things together. So as of today, we have not received the New York State budget as of yet. There's still, they did extenders yesterday, allowing the state of New York to continue doing their daily business. It's looking like I've read some things, there's sort of some anticipation by Friday, but they've got some things to work through. So the numbers you see this evening are based on the January numbers. The difference this year is that the state honored the commitment that they made a year ago, which was half the way between us and 100%. So we had an increase of $2 million and $1,000. In that, there is some question that we did present back in February. There was discussion at the Oswego County School Boards Association with Dr. Timms had talked about $263,000 more for Fulton, so we built that in, but I brought that up at a couple other meetings. That does not include those dollars here this evening because we don't know if those are real dollars as of yet. Next slide, please. Tonight's presentation will really focus on our budget parameters, our budget assumptions, estimated budget revenues, proposed budget, and federal stimulus funds review. To give you a timeline, we're having a budget committee meeting with our stakeholder group this Thursday at 6 p.m. That'll be virtual and it'll be recorded for those in the community to be able to watch that as well. Board of Education regular business meeting the 19th. We hope to come back that evening, hopefully with a budget that you'll be ratifying that evening to move forward to our public. If not, if there are still questions or things that we need to adjust. We do have a special meeting on the 25th, which is the City Boces budget meeting, which we have to do as a county on that same evening. So we do have a board meeting scheduled. So if necessary, we could push it out that far. If necessary, if we had to make any adjustments. The budget hearing is on May 3rd at 6 p.m. It'll be virtual as well as live here. Is it junior high or here, Ms. Perry? At the junior high in the boardroom. And we'll be going virtual from there. And then we'll be doing the budget vote on the 17th, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. at the Fulton Memorial. And then the Board of Education will be meeting on the 18th, hopefully to ratify a past budget. So that's kind of a timeline for you. I'm not going to read through these, but everything that we do each year comes back to allowing us to drive all the resources towards accomplishing our mission and vision for the district. These were put together and when we put together the strategic coherence plan back in 2019, we redid the vision and mission. Everything was brought together then. We are going to be doing in the coming weeks, we're having our district coherence council, I believe it's meeting on the 18th, as a kickoff meeting and really start the discussions, even though we're completing our third year, really starting to discuss what's the extension of that plan so we can continue our long-term planning and as well as our vision. Our beliefs and our guiding principles, which I won't read through those. I've acknowledged these in each of our meetings in the past, but everything comes back and we'd like to remind ourselves, these are all the reasons why we do this work, and our kids are at the center of all the work that we do. Next slide, please. Coherence, and the most important piece on this slide to me is always, it's our collective commitment. The reason why we have a coherence plan is that we want to bring things together. We want everybody to have a collective understanding, a collective commitment to our work. And what I found is a lot of the things that we're doing now always come back to focusing the future direction of the district, developing the collaborative culture, deepening our learning, and then securing accountability for our programs. And then it comes full circle, and we make those adjustments that we need to do. And I think that's why we've experienced some success with our plans. Next slide. These are the strategic intents that are at the core of our coherence plan, and I won't read those. They are on our website. You'll see on the coming slides also, we'll break those out a little bit. Next slide, please. Just for those of you who are watching or those in the audience, and a reminder to the board, this year we've done presentations at previous board meetings. So we did leadership back in November, we did literacy in January. You can actually click on these on the website. It will take you right to those reports. You can actually see our accomplishments and also how they are attached or connected to the ARP or federal monies, the CRRSA and ARP funds as well. But also that work was started well before ARP and CRRSA. So it brings you back. And then we also have the budget parameters. Go back one slide, please. And so what we have is in the middle you have your budget parameters, and each one of these are connected to our budget. So for example, our budget parameter for family engagement was to maintain and enhance communication systems that are responsive to the needs of all families. So that was one of the budget parameters back in December, if you recall. We went through, we established our budget parameters and then into January so that we have them. And so when we're putting together this budget, everything comes back to how does it support each part of this budget. Next slide, please. Here are the ones for instruction and social emotional developmental health as well. And I think if you look at all 6 together, they encompass all of the work that we do each and every day and are at the core of all of the foundation of what we're going to be doing now and in the future. It also makes a nice connection to the past. So you can actually see how we've kind of even get through the last 2 years. Our plan was a big part of that. We were able to stay the course. Our plan was flexible as well as adaptable to those times. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oops. Going the wrong way. Here we go. Thank you. Dr. Lisi.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Bobino. So as we started developing the budget this year, there were certain assumptions that we certainly had to keep in mind. And these are things that I'm sure you're all aware of, particularly in the current climate that we're all dealing with. One of the things that came about was inflation. We keep hearing about inflation, and we know that at this point, generally speaking, inflation's almost capping 8%. But we've dug a little bit deeper because I think it was important to explain just what that actually means. And I want to share with you just some facts and figures. This is no surprise to anyone. If you look at the bar, the brown bar there, that's energy costs. And that's something that we really need to be conscious of and we're conscious of as we develop the budget. Also, we're still continuing to experience challenges with the supply chain, and as you know, those challenges certainly have an impact on costs, and we feel that on a regular basis.
Mr. Lisi, Dr.
Yes.
Lisi, can I ask you on the
Sure.
energy cost, is it particular to fuel oil or is it all energy cost?
All in, this is an aggregate
Okay.
figure, but it does obviously encompass our fuel costs in general,
Okay.
so our oil and so on.
So just to give you some background information, Mr. Is it picking me up, Tim? All right on there without? All right, with the foundation aid, these are the actual runs back in January from the executive runs. We came in at $38,606,431. That's $2,001,000 higher than we were last year, which is a very significant increase. It's about 5%. Now think about that. That's 68.5% of our budget received that increase. There's still another 20 or 32%. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Our services aid is really, and our building aids are just reimbursables. They're really actual costs. Reimbursements lag 1 year. And then our excess cost aid. So the total here is $55,344,388. But we need to remember that in this number is $657,280, which is earmarked specifically and only for pre-K. So if we had, with our early childhood programs, so in other words, if we only spent $475,000, we get $475,000. It's actual cost for actual cost. The monies that is allocated to us is $657,230. So what we did is we backed that out because it's not dollars that we can use to balance our budget. It's specifically for this program. So really this is the number. I know this is a little bit different than we've done before, but I wanted to draw that out because I think it's important to demonstrate that. I also want to say I think we have one of the better pre-K early childhood programs around. We did a very nice job with that. We've monitored the numbers very closely. Our magic number is what, 144, right? I believe our magic number is, that's where we're at. So, and our transportation is built into this. Those that have been on the board in the past, that was a game changer. When we were able to provide transportation within these constraints of this but 657, because there are board members that have been on multiple boards over the years, and the commitment's always been, stay within these dollars, team. We're not going to take out of the general fund. So we continue to strive, and one of the things that small cities continue to advocate for That number was 657 when I became superintendent here in 2016. So that number has not changed, and that's a concern for many districts across the state. This is something we continue to advocate for, is to try to have that number increase, because we know if we get them in earlier, we know the impacts of early childhood. Other revenues, 1.589. Our tax levy with a 0% increase. So think about this. This is 28.5% of our budget with a 0% increase. So we added 5% here, 0% here. So essentially, we're adding to 2/3 of the revenues coming in, which we'll explain in a few minutes. So the total revenues that we have estimated at this moment in time are $77,889,363. So that's what we're anticipating as revenues. Next slide, please. So in a three-part budget, there are three parts to a budget: the administrative part of the budget, the program part of the budget, all things instruction. This is where you want to see the dollars. And we sit right about 75%. And our capital is 14.9%. So that's all things associated with buildings and structures and things like that, ways of doing business. One of the things that I want to point out is that when you look at the pie, it's exactly what you should see. 74.7% program, 10.4 administration, 14.9. And the question always comes up, so we put it on the slide, which was in our 21-22 year budget, the administrative costs were 12.34. We've actually reduced those costs to 12.21. So it's always a question I get every year. Yes?
Because I came in kind of in the midst of our capital project. How far, like, where are we phase-wise with that? How are we trending as far as our budget goes? And
So, great question. And I was thinking I need to do a presentation at a future board meeting very soon. We are actually in phase 2C. We've finished all of the work in our 1A, 1B. Right now, the rest of 2A is the projects around the fire alarms. Actually next week they're testing here at G. Ray and at Granby. And then they've already started the installation at Lanningham. So those are all in place and finished. They'll be actually testing the systems next week, so when the kids come back, we may be fully on the new systems. And we're in the process, we'll be installing the turf fields this summer. The complex work will be this summer. And then we're planning site work at Granby and Fairgrave for the following spring. That'll be the last part of the project. So as far as the budget, we are dead on, right where we need to be, which I want to send kudos to King and to LaChase. They have been outstanding. Ms. Griffin and Mr. Crandall, they attend the every other Friday we have construction management meetings. They ask great questions. And they have been great partners in keeping us within budget. And as Dr. Lisi mentioned, the supply chain has really been a challenge. But knock on wood, I can find some here. We've been very fortunate. Our timelines have hit at the right times. So we'll continue to hope that that continues for our work.
Could you just speak to a moment, though, to the notion that any project we undertake is based on a 10-year plan so that it doesn't impact the general, or the budget? In other words, if we pay off debt, then we take on more debt.
right.
Yeah. So one of the important things that I never realized when you're superintendent is debt is a good thing. Right? When you're looking at things, I never really understood it. I'm still working through that. But one of the things we're already starting to talk about is a project for 25-26. We met with Mike Schuster from state of New York, from NICED, who is the guru of all of this work, along with one of his colleagues. They believe 2 weeks ago they were in. I saw them in the room down there. I went in and said hello, but I got a report afterwards. And we're already working with King to start prioritizing the work. Our building surveys are not due in they're due in 24. But we're already prioritizing the work and looking at what are those things that we need to build into a next project, and looking at what needs to be in that scope of work as priorities. You know, a great example is if you wait too long, you end up with problems. So there are, for example, the parking lot work, which isn't exciting, and you know, it's not, but I will tell you, that was on a project in 2007 and 9 that had been put off to the point where we had tripping issues, we had a lot of other pitting and a lot of other problems with that lot which were unsafe.
But I think the point I was trying to make related to budget annual budget is that we plan out those projects in a way that we're paying down our debt before we take on
That's correct.
new debt to do new projects, so that we're not spiking our budget for projects.
Right, well, I guess I was trying to kind of gauge where we were as far as the total finishing and if we were still on track as
Yes.
far as like prices rising and,
Yeah,
and
and
you know,
Brian
like
said,
getting
if you,
stuff, so.
and if you recall, and for anybody listening, if you recall, we actually did some change up early on when we started because of pricing when we first went out to bid, which changed up what we attacked in this
Yep.
project. So it is watched very well, and I agree with Brian, the people that we've hired have done an excellent job at keeping the district informed about pricing and shortage concerns and what that might mean to pricing.
Right.
So they've been very good about that.
And also the energy performance contract, we run ours very much parallel, and once again, has been dovetailed nicely. That project is almost complete, and they're doing walkthroughs and punch lists next week. They're actually walking through, most of the lighting projects are done. The cooling tower is the project right now that they're focusing on over at the junior high. So also that project goes along with it. We often don't think about that, but that's a huge impact, and we've had great success with our EPC projects over the years. So next slide. So the budget that we're putting forth is a 3.45% increase. In 21-22, it was 3.3. We took into consideration the inflationary numbers. The numbers we're going to show you in a second will show you that, you know, we really went through and we've already cut back in some of those areas. We really, because that number would have been larger. So right now, it's a 2.629440 increase. If you remember from the slide that I presented previously, the money that we've got with new revenues coming in with foundation aid, that 68.5%, was $2,001,440. So in other words, about $600,000 short of where we really are. Next, and also here, and again, we've looked at contract costs, salary and benefits. We are having to add a speech pathologist. It's something we've looked at in the past, but based on the IEPs, the individual educational plans of students, and based on the input from our director of special education, the speech pathologist is something we need to put in place. Also, the other way. Also, we're going to need to add a PE/health teacher. We've got needs in the area of health. We also are having a lot of traveling with our phys ed. And so we're looking at that, and if you remember, and Chris, you can remind me, 4th to 6th grade a few years ago, we actually met the 3 times a week and actually meet the minutes, which in New York State. And so we always keep that in mind too. We worked hard to get that there. We don't want to regress because that's what the mandate, that's what's required. So that's what we're going to be doing there, and we'll continue. The other thing we're watching is we're still getting the finalization of all of the student selections for the courses for 9th through 12th grade, so that's still being solidified. So we're not anticipating any adjustment, but again, until those final numbers come in, we need to take a peek. And then this maintains all programs and our supports. What it does not put in is one position that's presently on the federal dollars. And we've talked about this. So we really need to think about, as we build a budget, we need to build the capacity and the ability to sustain positions. Next year at this point in time, your question to me and to my entire team should be, as well as the budget committee, will be, what are those priorities of the priorities that we've got to figure out a way to get them over into our general fund budget from the federal funds, because the federal funds run out in the fall of 25, or 24, I'm sorry, September of 24. And there's questions about how that's going to be done. So right now, we've really got to think about this coming year and the year after, building the capacity and really thinking about what are those essentials, what are those academic supports, what are those social and emotional supports that we have to provide our kids to make sure we keep the rudder deep and keep our kids excelling. So,
Ryan, where are we at right now in terms of the IDEA funding? It seemed that through the course of the pandemic, when there was an increase in federal aid, that percentage was increased to districts. Is that true? And is that
ours was
a
relatively.
commitment?
That's a great question. I have, and again, I would have to speak to to Danielle and to Paula about that. I don't believe that figure changed for much in our idea, and we don't get it until it comes in later. This is part of the problem. We haven't seen the federal funds yet. There's my answer to my question. If I talked long enough, I get it. We actually haven't received our dollars yet for next year. That comes in more toward the end of the year. So that also impacts our ability to budget. So we always go with it. Here's where we're at now. We know we're pretty consistent here with respect to the number of students who receive services here. It comes in right around 600, give or take. We've been very consistent. Once again, knock on wood. Some districts go up, some districts. We've been relatively flat in that area. So, and again, I don't have an answer for that because we haven't seen the federal dollars as of yet. Those grants will come in hopefully sooner than later. And with additions, which would be even nicer.
I've read about the additions too, David.
Yeah, it's been talked about, but until we see it, yeah.
Maybe I misunderstood something or missed something, but you were saying that if this budget increase includes everything except for one position that we have to talk about next year? We have one position that we have to talk about.
Oh, no, what I said was all the positions, there's not one position from the federal dollars.
What that one position
And I wanted to say that this board brought up, I want to say it was what, 3 or 4 meetings ago, thereabouts. The question was, how are you going to sustain and have capacity to keep things that you have, Brian?
Okay.
So the frustrating part on this one is that there's none of those positions have come over onto the budget. We're showing us almost a $600,000 deficit now. We need to think about that. And I think the other piece is it's also a little early. We're just starting to see some of the outcomes, some of the impacts on kids.
Right. I understand. Okay.
Yep. That was a great question.
Okay.
Yep.
So to that end, I would just ask, I have been reading that mental health needs are not going to be gone by 24. And in fact, there's an anticipation it's going to take a lot longer than the 2 years that we were given funding for. So are you hearing the same thing or reading the same information?
Yeah, I'm reading the same things that you're seeing, a lot of the articles, a lot of the research that's coming out. Kids are coming in.
So with that in mind, I would just say that we need a healthy fund balance if we're to save any of those positions.
That's right.
Going forward. And that's going to be hard for a lot of people to understand. But we're going to go from having this money given to us specifically for that to absolutely no dollars other than what we've saved for it.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's a concern.
essential.
Yeah, and that's a real concern to me. And I'm really concerned about how to help our constituents understand that.
Yeah.
Because again,
Agreed.
the people smarter than me, the professionals, this is their prediction for where things are at based on what they're dealing with in the here and now.
Yeah, I think our social emotional needs, and what I'm seeing is it's the full gamut. Think about a second grader. A second grader hasn't had a, quote, typical experience since they started school. I mean, it boggles the mind. Think about a junior, a child who entered 7th grade at the beginning of COVID. Never really had a junior high experience of getting through adolescence and transitioning into high school. Didn't have those experiences. I said to somebody today, I wonder if you took me from the 1980s when I was in high school and you put me here at G. Ray Bodley in 2022, if I could even function in this world that's here right now in a healthy, safe way. With technology and with the speed of things and just the world the way it is right now. It's very interesting. And I think I have to remember sometimes that I have a lens from that vintage, but our kids are going through some very unique, they're experiencing the world uniquely. Each individual is experiencing it in their own way.
I also read though, obviously the children are first and foremost, but our adults are also having experiences that are unique that they've never dealt with before, especially in the classroom. And again, they're going to continue to need support also. So I say that now because it's just something I think we all need to make sure we are keeping to the forefront of our thinking as we move forward for the best of our kids and the best of our schools and what they can continue to offer. I want every child to have a great opportunity. And it's been hard during COVID, been very hard, but people have risen to the occasion and done the best that they can. But I just don't want us to think it's suddenly over because that's not what I'm reading from professionals that are much smarter than me. And typically the places where I read my information are pretty much, they've been on for me in the past. They're pretty accurate. So
I think too, though, parents are more aware of the mental health
Yeah.
struggles that kids are having, because it's not just in school.
Right, right.
You know, due to isolation and due to, you know, all this other stuff, and I just think that our country in general is becoming more aware, which is good. And
It
I
is.
hope that we don't have issues with that, because that's a number.
But the only thing I worry about that is when it comes to the dollars, sometimes people forget without being reminded. You know, dollars seem to move our focus for, you know, until we come back to say why. You know, why do we really need the expenditure?
It's really great that, I see that we're adding a, phys ed and health teacher, because, hopefully we're gonna get that dual cert. If we get a PE/health teacher, that's gonna help in the support for the social emotional
Yeah.
part of our student body. And moving forward, I'm watching Abby and Reagan up there, there's life, there's excitement. We are moving forward. We have things back into place. We're doing great with athletics and the performing arts. That all is going to be a huge, huge impact on these kids. So we need to, and my thought is, let's keep moving forward, keep providing these kids. And do we have to look back and remember? Absolutely. But let's not like dwell on it. You know, let's just keep moving forward. And I'm really happy and I'm really hoping that we hire that phys ed teacher that is that dual cert, because
Which would be nice,
that will be
yeah.
money well spent.
Yes.
Because we can use that person for sure.
So we did add 2 positions. So once again, even the cost through normal business, we have to look at those and the needs that the kids are presenting to us. So great questions. So just to give you an idea, I've mentioned that the funding that you see, the revenue increase that you see is predominantly on our 68.5% of our budget, which comes from the state of New York. And that represented just a tick over $2 million. Just to give you a perspective as we move into the next couple of slides, a 1% increase here in Fulton is $216,000. Money that comes every year down the road. And then a 2% is $432,266 or thereabouts. Next slide. So to give you the perspectives, this is the one we just presented to you, which was the state aid number, the new figure, minus the pre-K, $77,889,000. Our projected budget is $78,859,440. So the cost of doing business is $78,859,440, all rolled forward, inflationary costs, all those things rolled in, which we're able to come to that 3.45%. The shortfall then, with no additional tax levy dollars, is $970. At 1%, we'd come in at $753. That's $216,000 more here. And then just for perspective, 2% here would be the 432, and would come in at 537. Why is that an important piece? I believe on the next slide, if I remember correctly, let's take a peek. We used, want to talk about this slide, or you want me to?
Sure. So last year we used about $356,000 in fund balance to cover the shortfall. So this year, without an increase in the tax levy, it's approximately $970,000, which Mr. Baldino just shared with you. So obviously our expenses have changed with students back. You know, so our real costs are different. And as you talked about previously, the challenges are real. You know, we've got to move forward and think about what is that going to look like. Our 21-22 budget, we just talked about that. We use fund balance to cover that. And at a 0% increase, we're still looking at $970,000, and the shortfall will continue to grow. If we're looking at a 0% tax levy, it doesn't seem realistic because obviously our costs will continue to grow in subsequent years.
Just to point this out, last year we had a wider gap. We came back, we had about an $800,000 gap. Last year we were able to find $400,000 more dollars. I took a peek. That's what the board asked us to do. We've already gone in and we've taken about $600,000 off the top already this year. This 356, just if we took that 3.5–4% added on, this comes up to 370. So remember, we started with a $370,000 gap to start with. So this is a gap that we already created this year by using fund balance and reserves.
What is our fund balance right now at? I have that it's at 5.5%.
We're at 5 point, is that everybody, Mr. Bias, or Danielle, would that be you or Paula?
It's at 5.4% right now.
Right, what's the?
And the dollar figure associated?
3.9 million.
And over our normal 4%, 800 or 3.4 over?
Let's see, our normal 4% would be around 3.1, so it's probably just down.
Yep, there you go, look at that, huh? So, yep, so what we're saying is right now, the state of New York says that you can have 4% in your fund balance, and the comptroller likes that. The comptroller doesn't like when you go over. However, when you talk to many districts across the state, many are over that because of what's happened the last 2 years, underspending of budgets for a variety of different reasons. Right now, and I did find out yesterday or today, it's still out there floating around to increase that to 6 or 8%. So we're curious, that could increase that foundation or that amount that we can keep in our reserves and fund balance. So I think we need to keep that in the back of our minds, you know, because as Robin was talking about earlier, we may need some supports to continue on some of those needed supports 2 and 3 years from now after the ARP and CRRSA monies come out. For example, you know, social emotional supports, programs, things like that, for instance. Or we may find that we've got this gap in intermediate learning, 3rd to 5th grade, where these kiddos haven't bounced back yet, and we need to focus on academics instruction. Or we may find some supports and resources that our teachers need. You know, again, unanticipated. But so right now we're showing a $970,000 gap, and this should be 22, 23.
What would you like to use from the fund balance?
So, I think healthy would be somewhere around 550. I think that brings us down. The other thing is right now it looks like, if you remember at one of our previous board meetings, it looks like, and again it's a little early, looks like we're underspending about 280,000 to 300. Is that right? Thanks, Danielle. And so that's a comfortable figure because that could cross over. It keeps our reserves relatively strong. It takes them down a little bit, and it allows us to do a little bit of forethinking. And as I said, it was a bit frustrating that we weren't able to pull any of those positions over from the federal side in this school year. So, and again, but at the same time, it's a bit early. But we need to be thinking forward. So, next slide, please. So a question that's been coming up a lot. Would you like to talk about this slide? You like this slide.
Sure, happy to. The question comes up a lot about tax levies and who assigns them. Well, it's not the district. It's important that we share with you that the district is responsible for determining property assessments, and we know we're in the process of that now. The city and town tax rates, that's not a school district function, and equalization rates, which to many is confusing, and I certainly understand that. We have provided some information about these details on our website, and we've also provided a link to Oswego County's website for further information. So hopefully that's helpful. Very shortly, we'll be providing a video helping you understand what your tax bill is and the details of it, because I know that can be a challenge in some sense.
Next slide.
And so, what does it actually look like in real dollar figures? I think this is important for folks to realize. So if we're looking at, for example, what the slide shows is if we have a home value of $70,000, that's rare today, obviously, $100,000 and $150,000, at a 1% tax levy increase, what do the real dollars look like? What is the actual increase? And so we've shared that with you in these slides so you get a sense of what that looks like per year.
And this is based on the data, our data.
Our current data. So this is estimated, this is pre-assessment because we don't have those figures yet. So to give you a sense of what that looks like. And this is after the basic star exemption. And again, at 2%, these are the figures on a yearly basis, what that increase would actually look like.
So it gives you a ballpark figure. I think sometimes, I think we all, think that, and again, it lends us some perspective and allows you to, as you're making decisions and thinking about the things we need to think about over the next few weeks, just gives you a perspective to be able to really quantify it. Because you think 1%, what does that mean to me? This gives you an idea of what it could mean. Next slide, please. Any questions? Next slide, please. My favorite slide every year. What this shows just gives you a great perspective, and I always thank the boards that have served, at least back to 12-13, because that's what's on this slide. But you've done a very responsible job of really being aware of Fulton and the challenges that Fulton presents. So this slide, what it shows is at the top, it gives you the actual budget, the enacted levy, and the increase in the actual percent that the board and the public ratified. The permissible was this. So in 12-13, we had a 1.9% increase, but the permissible was 3.1. And this goes down through all the way to the bottom, where at the current time, our permissible growth has been 4.9 million, and we've collected 2.29. So when you look at our gap, it actually, now who would have ever gone to all those maxes? No one. But it's interesting that when you look at that, it easily would have covered our gaps over time. I also want to point out one of the things I was playing with earlier today, just to kind of, sometimes I have to remind myself. When you go from my first budget, which I inherited from Mr. Lynch at 0.43, I had a minus 1.74, thank you to the tax cap formula, 2.02%, 2.69, 2, and 0. This comes out to an average over 6 years of just over 0.5%. So when you look at what we've done over time, it's really less than a percent. It's actually 0.56%. So I think it's something to be aware of. I think, and then we had a couple budgets in here where we had a $400,000 increase year to year. And then we had another one that was a $350,000, $360,000 increase. So we've been very fiscally responsible. And I think coming forward, we're poising this budget, I believe, allows us and puts us in a position to support our staff, to support our kids, to support the future of the district as we move forward and get ready to transition about post-COVID federal dollars. Forget COVID, federal dollars that go with the COVID. Because we have something that educators never will see again, which is an influx of monies to really get things turned around. But we have some challenges that we're addressing, that were presented due to the pandemic. Some things were magnified, other things came out. And so I think this budget allows us to do this, to do our work and support our teachers and our kids and this community. And allow us to do some of those exciting things, early college, high schools, drone certifications, go down to our young ones, our letters training, our work that we're doing around early literacy. We're coming at it from both ends. And I'm going to do a little kudo for our SEL. I know that there are districts that talk about they wish they had the mental health supports, they wish they had them in their schools. We have full-time mental health support in every one of our schools. And that's a testament to years of work by Ms. Geiger and her team and all of the individuals in the community that support and serve this community. This truly has been the SEL is one of our strengths. And I think this is the type of budget that will allow us to keep all of these things, not only this year, but 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. We're really talking about that far away right now. Next slide, please.
Yeah, just before
go
we
ahead.
move forward, Mr. Wilson, we've talked about what a 0, a 1%, and 2% increase looks like, but it's important to mention, I think we may have brought this up at the last meeting, that our actual permissible increase is 2.43%.
Which is 524.
Right.
I talked about the funding as one-time allocation, so it seems like a lot, and it is, but it's going to dry up very quickly, and it's one-time expenditures. So as we presented at a previous board meeting, you saw the different types of things that we're purchasing, a lot of good things, one-time purchase, new desks, things like that. Adjust all here at the high school, I think every room almost has brand new desks, adjustable, so on and so forth, much more appropriate. But the staffing, the FTEs, the full-time employees, there are 30. Those are things that are recurring costs. So we're being very careful about what we put on federal funds. Next slide.
I think it's also important to mention that this cannot be used to bridge any gap in our budget, so it's very, very important to make that clear. So. And this slide just shows our spending in those areas with those COVID stimulus funds, where the funding is actually going and how it was allocated in the different areas based on our strategic coherence plan. And we've been through this in the past meetings. And again, I'll just repeat what Mr. Falvino mentioned earlier. In that slide that has the links, you can actually see where the spending was and how it's being done. And on our website, we posted exactly what was purchased. You can take a look at that.
The slides are on the budget section of the website. Next slide. So we start with where we began. This is our timeline. Budget committee this Thursday. We've got our business meeting the 19th, city Boces meeting the 25th. So if we need more time, we've got that extra bit of time here. We have our budget hearing May 3rd. May 17th, probably one of the big bullet right there should be, that's the actual vote, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on the 17th, and then ratification hopefully on the 18th. Ms. Griffin.
Can you go back a slide? I think you have a typo.
Okay, where?
The number, at number 3 instruction. I see 6 and 3 zeros.
Oh,
Yeah, it's not 26 minutes.
Yeah, we will fix that, thank you.
Okay, I just want, because somebody else is
Wishful
going to
thinking.
see, well, yeah, somebody else is going to see that and think that.
Yep, no, we will correct that right as soon as we get done here. Good catch. Any questions? So the challenge before us is a $970,000 gap. There's a number of ways to get there. And I think a combination of a tax levy increase coupled with use of reserves and fund balance is probably the most strategic way. The board last year did 370, or 356 rather. We need to look at that. I think, as I mentioned before, I think something in the 550 range would probably be the best range to go with that. That allows us, I will say that there's not much more that's left to reduce, to add those new positions in. We made some reductions in different areas to try to make some cuts. And I will say that the business team has been instrumental. I think I'm able to get information very quickly. We've become extremely automated down there, and that's been great because my questions are asked or answered very quickly. And one of the things that I know that the team has been doing is doing like about a 5-year look back. Forget what's happened the last 2 years. That's an anomaly. So what we've been doing, is it 6 years or 5 years, thereabouts? 5 years. So they've been going back. And so we actually been looking over time at our expenditures in all of these different areas and also taking a really strong look at our revenues. Hence why I pulled pre-K out this year. Pre-K, I wanted the board and the community to really see that there are $657,000 sitting in foundation aid that aren't dollars that can be driven anywhere we want to go.
So, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Are you?
I'm ready to answer questions.
So with the, around roughly 550,000 from our fund balance, is that, because I saw on the slide 2.43%, is that what we are thinking that we're going to go with, or are we going closer to 2%, or?
So it's really one of the things I often ask the board for, is some feedback. If the board is comfortable with the 2%, then what I would say, you haven't heard me go to 243.
Right, that's right, but it was on the slide.
It is, it's there. Our maximum tax cap is 243. So the board, we could go for our maximum tax cap 2.43 if we go back where that slide was. We did have a 2.43 a couple of years ago. That actually was our tax cap.
Yeah.
So it's something for the board to consider. I also understand that, obviously people, it's a tough thing to consider and look at for our community. I think for me to say that we've been 0.56 over the last 6 years, I think is an important piece for everybody to recognize. And, it's really, as you say, it's 2.2% on our local share. Right now, our local share's got 0, so that 5% can't carry us that we got in the foundation.
Okay.
So my thing is, there's a range that we've given you. I'm comfortable, with that. 2% is probably where I'm average comfortable.
Yeah.
Obviously, if we went higher than that, that would be a
Well, I
less
think
of an impact.
the important slides the most important slide to me was what you showed the increase would be per household. So really 0.43% is not,
It's negligible. It's about a half more.
Yeah, so-
$5 to $6.
We're not talking, well, it's less than 60 on 100,000.
Right, that's what I mean, I don't-
In a year, less than 60
Yeah.
an hour increase.
and I think when people see that quantified in that way, they're like, oh, okay, I spend $100 a week on gas.
I think the other piece is that I think at board meetings, we try to put as much information out as possible. And our fiscal reports, I think, allow us, that's something very different, the way we're doing them now every month. The board is seeing at the end of every month, where are we at in that month? So I think that shows that we're being fiscally responsible. 281 is the closest we've been to budget since my first year, which was 95,000 at the end of the year. So I haven't been that close, but we're lean. You know, we're a lean district. I think we've always been that way. I think it's something to be proud of because of what we offer, but I think we have to keep an eye on it very closely when you are that way.
Yeah, no, this is really good.
Other questions? So I don't know what the board's pleasure, I mean, if there's any
Well,
adjustments, I
Does
would need
anybody
to.
want to, 2.43 is the max we can go. And
Correct.
that is a $100,000 home that would come in slightly under $60 for the year. So I don't know, and a 2 is
This is the two.
38.98.
That's 2%.
That's 2.
Yeah, so it's 38.98 for 2, or to go to 2.43. I know it's less than 60, I don't know how much.
Go back one more.
This is with the current assessments, not the evaluation.
Right.
Okay.
You go back one slide.
But then but with the revaluations, there's
Right.
still, it's a percentage,
It
isn't
is.
it? Up to, with a dollar amount, up
Correct.
to,
So it'd be about $9 to $10 more if you split the difference on these. So this one went to 38, so half, just under half would be about $9.
Yep.
yeah. So,
Right. So go back to the 2%. So you'd be looking at approximately $48, $49, $48,
I'm just saying the
$49.
star though, does anybody offhand know the limit, there's an upper limit on how?
I don't
For
offhand.
the
Either one of you know?
30%?
Mrs. Hayden, do you know that?
On the star, but isn't there a limit, 30%, it's based on 30% of the assessment?
I believe STARS is a flat rate.
30,000.
I think you're-
Oh, 30,000.
I believe it's 30,000.
30,000.
I was looking at my
All
personal
right,
ones
I
the
have
other
it
day.
wrong. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had the number 30, I just wasn't remembering the, how it worked.
And I think for anybody in the public, anytime we have questions, we have on our website, there's Let's Talk. There's also a simple call to the superintendent's office or the business office.
So when you look at your assessment, what we're saying is you can take your assessment, deduct 30,000, and then you can figure out where you fall in that.
Pretty close. Relatively close.
Have we had any feedback from, like the city obviously just
Right.
whatever. How much, was that a big hit for a lot of people? I don't,
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
pretty substantial.
But the question was, did it impact the taxes? Because the tax rates will change and
Right,
adjust.
we
The
don't know.
question is,
And
that's
the other
what.
thing is
Right.
if the wealth is up, it can lower the tax rate.
Right.
So we don't know that answer until all of that work is finalized. And so that's a big question mark, where we end up. And this is just a really odd time, and it's my understanding that the assessors took into consideration the fact that housing market right now
right.
Is
I
it-
tried to watch that meeting a little
is
bit.
in a weird, is in an odd place, so. I don't think anybody knows. I mean, typically, revals happen and you have a pretty good idea where you're gonna land, and I really don't know that anybody knows that at this time. Because it has been suggested it could lower the rate if the overall wealth is increased. I just don't know.
I just don't think we have, I have to imagine that a lot of our fiscal stress comes from the economics of the community, which in general are, kind of lower. I don't know.
And the adjustment could, again, when the final number comes out, hopefully
Right.
Dr. Tim
Yeah,
is
we don't
correct.
know. And
That would be
more
helpful.
people are working, there's been more jobs
So we don't know.
available, that's been a good thing.
Yep.
So that indicator's been very healthy. When I was here for the job fair for the students, my goodness, everybody locally was hired, everybody's hired. Everybody's hired.
Literally.
And really, and they were offering really nice wages. So that's different, we haven't seen that in a long time.
So our next step will be, once we get a finalized budget, whether it's Thursday, Friday, so whenever we seem to get it, we'll put those final numbers in, we'll send out the different scenarios to you so you can actually see the 0, 1, the 2, and 2.43. You can add that, just so
Okay.
you have it for discussion purposes.
That would be good.
And then we have a meeting on the 19th. of which we really will try to keep that agenda relatively light with budget heavy that evening, so we can really dig in. And then if there are tweaks, it allows us one more week. We'll get our budget newsletter all ready to go, and all we'd have to do is enter figures into the document.
And if you're meeting with your group.
Yep, this
your-
Thursday.
Huh?
The
Yes.
budget committee this
Yes, when
Thursday.
you meet with your budget committee,
Mhm.
maybe you can get a sense of how they're feeling about it too.
Oh, yeah.
As residents, it would be nice to hear what their input is.
Yeah, we always try to schedule their meeting right after.
Right,
It allows us then to extend the conversation from the board to them, as far as give them the similar presentation, give them, what you got this evening, coupled with kind of the feedback we got and gives them some time for discussion and feedback, because it is a very nice representative group of individuals.
so it would be nice to hear what they're thinking.
Can I speak? Can you guys
Hi,
hear me?
ma'am.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
I'd like it to be known that as a school district, we put this up for a vote and we go through the process so everyone knows exactly where the money needs to be put, what we're using it for. We're not hiding anything, so I just want that put out there that the public has a chance to vote on this. Whereas with city taxes, there is no vote.
Good point, Lynn, thank you. Forgot you were there sometimes. It's
I told you,
voice from
your
the
picture
skies.
right there.
I'm listening to you all.
I'm glad you chimed in.
Any other questions this evening? If you have any questions after the board meeting over the coming days, or receive questions from constituents, point them to Dr. Lisi and I, and we'll be more than glad to answer them and publicize them as well. Because one question, probably others have the same one. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Griffin.
Thank
If there's
you.
no other questions.
Which brings us to item 4.01, our financials. Will someone move it? Move it. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passed 600. Item 5.01, approved policies.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? My thanks to the policy committee. Great work, folks. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Lynn, I wasn't sure. You said you were a yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Pass 600.
Robin.
Yeah.
4.02.
4.02. Thank you. I missed one. Item 4.02, to accept a donation from Read to Them.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Pass 600. Item 6.01, approved committee on special education.
Move it.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Pass 600. I wondered if you would be interested in batching items 7.01 through 7.07 personnel.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion on any of those items? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Pass 600. Board forum. Mrs. Appleton, would you like to start tonight?
I would like to thank Dr. Lisi and Superintendent Polino for all of the information to digest on the budget. As you know, this is my favorite time of year. Seeing those big numbers sometimes can be overwhelming, but I do agree with Mrs. Papalaro that one with the assessments of the house and the increased tax, that's pretty helpful to actually see that right there on the slide. So I do appreciate that. It was really nice to have Mr. Alls and his athlete students come in or not perform, but it kind of was a performance reading because you have that voice that is just very entertaining. So I enjoyed listening to the girls talk about our wonderful athletes and all those records that have been broken. All I can say is wow, amazing. Super proud of all of our athletes. So it was good for you guys to share that with us. Thank you very much. And Moving on to our next one.
Thank you. Mrs. Major?
Thank you, Dr. Lisi and Mr. Palomino. Thank you for putting all of this in layman's terms, especially since this is my first budget that I've been a part of. So it is a lot to digest, but it's easier to understand with everything that's going on. And Mr. Palomino, I'd like to personally thank you and everybody that's listening. Being a new board member, I have a lot of questions, and if you ever have, I don't even know where I'm looking, but if you ever have a question about anything, just call Mr. Palomino and he will get back to you, because I've had many. And he gets back to you in a very timely fashion, like sometimes within 30 seconds. So he will get back to you and he will have an answer for you. And if he doesn't, like right away, he will find the answer and get back to you. So that's thank you for all of your time. I appreciate that. Thank you for Mr. Els and the girls this evening. I love seeing, there's a direct correlation of when you do well, you feel well. And that was a representation of what doing well looks like. And they're scholar athletes and they're doing well in the classroom, and we're getting over this hump of COVID. And I think it's just a big part of what Fulton is encouraging, what we support. The culture of our buildings are coming back, and it just makes me so happy for these kids to just watch it. We're giving it, it's like rebirth. Spring is coming, and it's exciting to watch. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Lynn? Mrs. Lyons?
I don't have any more to say than what everybody already said. I appreciate everybody's hard work, that's for sure. But it's never easy. But I'm grateful, as I've told Brian over and over, that he puts it in layman's terms so everybody can understand it. And having the committee is also perfect, so thank you. And Mr. Els, thank you and your athletes. Very impressed with the fact how many teams our student, their academics are wonderful, so very good job, guys.
Thank you. Mr. Cordone?
I agree with everything that's already been said, but again, just to highlight the congratulations to all of our athletes as individuals and their teams.
Mrs. Capoeira?
Yep, thank you guys, Mr. Palomino and Dr. Lisi. That was a really good presentation. I appreciate a lot of your work, you guys especially. I know that there's a lot that goes into this, and it can be stressful. And I thought that was very thorough, and I think that the public will be good with a lot of the stuff that you discussed. Thank you to Read to them for the donation. Thanks for Mr. Hall's presentation. The Student Leadership Conference, we had some really wonderful speakers there. I got a lot of feedback. I actually bought one of the books for one of the speakers. That had a huge impact on my daughter, that I bought the book that she wrote. So, also want to thank our counselors right now going through scheduling. It's also a really important time of year to get through, and all the requests and all the parents and that wonderful stuff. So appreciate their role.
Thank you. Reagan?
I think everybody basically covered what I was going to say, but I do again want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak tonight. I know myself and Abigail really enjoyed it, so thank you.
You could really tell.
And again, everyone's expressed my feelings exactly. Very grateful for everyone that participated tonight. It's nice to see the business office folks here this evening on hand to help straighten me out. I could always use help. And Mr. Els, as always, it's nice to have you come and tonight with help especially to talk about our student athletes. And we wish our current student athletes this current season great success. I hope that they're successful as the last group and the predecessors. It's quite exciting. We have a lot to look forward to. All right, So with that said, we are now at the second public forum. Is there anyone that wishes to address the board on a topic germane to tonight's agenda? Okay, I see no takers. Would someone then move item 8.03 to move to executive session?
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And abstention. Pass 600. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Is that enough for people? And we will convene an executive session. When we complete that work, we will come back out to close out our meeting. I thank those of you who may be watching from a distance for joining us. I thank those of you who came out tonight to join us. We would really like seeing your smiling faces, so thanks again. All right, 5 minutes.
Go ahead.
Okay, item number 8.04, to approve a paid administrative, am I on? To approve a paid administrative leave. Did someone move it?
Move it.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Pass 600. And item 9.01, excuse me, to adjourn this meeting.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Pass 600. And thank you all. Thank you, Lynn. Stay safe.